All right, thank you, Luigi and Paula, for including the paper on the program. So what I look at in this study is really a union of two things. It's this idea of stakeholder capitalism and who does it bring value to, and whether or not we can actually deliver that in a state of the world where everything is so polarized. So specifically thinking about political polarization, it has steadily been increasing in the US and it's near all-time highs now. So this is a great figure from Boxell, Genskow, and Shapiro, where they look at survey evidence of how favorable people think of their own political party relative to the others. And this polarization has been steadily increasing, and there's been a lot of research showing that this is affecting our everyday lives. So people's choices of where they buy their home is affected by this, how long they spend with their family at Thanksgiving, even who we date and choose to marry is affected by this polarization. So with things becoming more polarized in every piece of our lives, corporations too are being pulled into these political issues, and they're having to be better at actually navigating this situation. And this is a recent trend. If we think about, say, the 90s, it was more of a badge of honor to be apolitical. And I think this quote from Michael Jordan kind of encapsulates the thought of the time. So, and the peak of his fame in the NBA when Michael Jordan was winning championships, and also the face of the Air Jordan shoe line for Nike, he was asked to endorse a North Carolina, someone running for the Senate there. But he decided not to. It was someone running on the Democratic ticket. He said he didn't really know the issues, and besides, Republicans buy shoes too. So his idea was he didn't want to alienate half of his potential customers by taking a political stance. And you saw this was kind of the common trend pretty recently. So that was then, but if we look at today, now there are companies every week getting pulled into political issues. Sometimes they willingly go into these issues. Say, for example, when Nike ran the ad campaign for Colin Kaepernick, which was tied to the police brutality protests, which were politicized, or when the NBA was pulled into the Hong Kong versus China protests whenever the Houston Rockets manager tweeted about the issue. And then, of course, what I'll be studying in this paper was Walmart's recent decision to ban open carry in stores and then encourage gun control. Really, the common thread here is firms getting into these issues, not just because of the purpose for shareholders, but this new business round, or this year-old business roundtable idea of stakeholder capitalism, trying to be more involved in social issues. So what I'm going to look at is, can we actually kind of have our cake and eat it too? Can we get involved in these social issues and keep all of our stakeholders happy? So I'm looking specifically at this Walmart situation, and just a brief background of what happened. There was a shooting at a Walmart in August of 2019, and Walmart responded by first discontinuing sales of certain gun ammo. But what makes it a real political issue is they banned open carry in stores, and they made an open call to Congress to strengthen gun control laws. And if we think about kind of tying this to Lucian's presentation, you can argue this is more of this pluralistic stakeholder view. It's hard to say that this is going to help shareholders immediately if we're going to stop, or if we're going to lose market share in the gun ammunition market. This was more intended to serve our customers, our employees, the community, even by increasing safety. However, if we're looking at ideas about stakeholder capitalism, can we bring value to each one of those stakeholders if they're going to disagree about that? And gun control is one of the most divisive topics in the US. So there's going to be some stakeholders, particularly customers, who just oppose gun control laws, and they're going to lose value out of this. So that's the background, and the practical application of this. I'm going to use smartphone data from SafeGraph. That's going to allow me to see the foot traffic to and from Walmart's and Sam's Clubs, as well as their competitors. And it'll let me see this through a long time series for around this event for a lot of stores, so over 63,000 stores that are competitors to Walmart. So just a preview of the results. There's a lot of interesting variation that happens here. Just looking at the aggregate response by consumers to foot traffic to Walmart's, there's a 3% decline relative to competitors. when Walmart makes this statement. But when we look further within different counties, so areas where Walmart's located that's highly Democratic, for instance, there's actually an increase in foot traffic, so about 3% more than competitors. However, in highly Republican areas, there's a large decrease, about 10% relative to the competitors. And in these highly Republican areas, I also find that this effect persists. So the entire post period, the foot traffic to Walmart is lower than their competitors. So as I mentioned in the intro, there are a lot of firms that are getting pulled into these political issues. So why am I studying Walmart specifically? Well, when you look under the surface, you see it's a really ideal setting, both motivation and identification wise. So first off, this is pretty unique because it's a really explicit stance. So not only are they discontinuing gun ammo, but from Doug McMillon, his statement on this is he is publicly encouraging nations leaders to move forward and strengthen background checks. He even sends letters to the White House and Congress to support this idea. So it's an explicit stance. This is also phased out nationwide whenever they make this statement, which differs from a lot of, so if we compare this to say Dick's Sporting Goods, who've also phased out their gun ammunition, they actually selected stores that they would do the phase out throughout time. So there's more of a selection issue there, just thinking about econometrically, where here we have a nationwide phase out. And again, this is the CEO bringing up this issue, which Doug McMillon also happens to be the new chairman of the Business Roundtable, in addition to being CEO of Walmart. So it's this explicit stance on an issue that is one of the most polarizing issues in the US. So if we look at survey evidence from Pew about gun control, we find that it's more polarizing now than ever. So Republicans are about 4 times as likely to say that gun rights is more important than gun control relative to Democrats. And there's a lot of third parties that are trying to fan the flames here. So if we, here's an example from the NRA. They said that lines at Walmart will soon be replaced by lines at other retailers who are more supportive of America's fundamental freedoms. So there's a lot of political issues out there, but if we had to pick one where I would think a consumer response would happen, I think gun control is one of the most likely instances. Then just from an identification point of view, Walmart is everywhere, which is really nice for my setting. So 90% of Americans live within 10 miles of a Walmart store, which is nice if we're looking at foot traffic data, because a Walmart in a highly Republican area will have likely an adverse reaction, whereas one in a highly Democratic area will have a good reaction. And because Walmart is everywhere, I'll have a lot of variation within my data. So there's about 132 stores in highly Republican areas for Walmart. And then again, comparing this to Dick's, they have only 1 store that's located in a highly Republican area. So this Walmart setting is just really nice, both for the motivation and the identification. Additionally, if I'm using this foot traffic data, it's nice to use Walmart because they're still dominated by in-store sales. So in 2019, only about 3% of their sales came from e-commerce. So although I'm missing that piece, the majority of their business comes from this people actually being in the stores. So foot traffic is going to be a good proxy for their actual sales. So despite all of that motivation, there's still potential to not really find anything here, just for the simple fact that Walmart's pretty amazing. It's an incredibly cheap store for all the value they bring. You can get all of your shopping done there, your entertainment and your groceries. Beyonce might even show up and buy everybody's Christmas presents just randomly. So it's a great place. Customers just get so much value out of this that even if they disagree with Walmart's statement, they might not react just because of the value that they get. So it's ultimately an empirical question about whether there's an effect from Walmart's statement. So digging into the data a little bit, as I mentioned, the data is from SafeGraph and it's foot traffic data. I used to say it was novel foot traffic data, but then the pandemic happened and every paper seems to use it these days. But that's also good from my perspective because people are more familiar with it now. So the way it works is that SafeGraph partners with different smartphone apps. So anytime you download a weather app or a GPS app and share your location in order to see the local weather or get directions, you'll share your location and that will give pings to the smartphone apps, which then relay that to SafeGraph. So I can see where consumers go differing based on the stores in their local area. And it's a really big data set, almost 50 million cell phones. And importantly, it's a pretty good indicator of what actual sales are. So just a simple correlation of the North American Walmart sales, which is going to include also Mexico and Canada. It correlates with this foot traffic of just the US stores of 0.71. Obviously, store level sales would be the holy grail of have to have sales for Walmart and all of its competitors. This is what I think is the best proxy available to study this type of question. Now within this safe graph data, I need to find some competitors to have a counterfactual for Walmart, and I use their 6-digit NAICS code. So all general merchandise stores are going to be the competitors for Walmart in my setting. And the safe graph data is really nice because I can look at both public, big national competitors like Dollar General, as well as the private firms that might just be in local areas. So for example, in Chicago, a competitor might be the Village Discount Outlet Store, something that wouldn't show up in big public data sets like CRISP or CompuStat, but still an important competitor that I'm able to identify in this data set. So there's a lot of small competitors. So overall, there's 63,000 stores, about 5,000 of which are Walmarts or Sam's Clubs. And I pair this with the voting record data from the 2016 election at the county level. So the idea would be that the more a county voted for Trump in the 2016 election, the less likely they will be to agree with Walmart's statement. So a higher Republican vote share should be associated with a more negative reaction to Walmart's statement. So armed with this data, I set up a difference in differences analysis where I'm going to compare the monthly store visits for Walmart and its competitors, both in the pre and post period. So my interaction will be an identifier for a Walmart or a Sam's Club, interacted with an indicator equaling 1 in the post period. And I'm able to control for a lot of things through fixed effects. So I include store fixed effects to control for the store size. Maybe it's in an advantageous location or it's got good management quality. And I can also control for things like the year-month fixed effects and county year-month fixed effects, which is going to absorb things like local economic health, any store sales seasonality, or county population growth. So first I'm going to look at this just at the aggregate level and then dig into the partisan results after that. So at the aggregate level, I find there is a negative reaction to Walmart's statement. So foot traffic decreases relative to competitors. So highlighted in red here are regressions of that model, just varying the different types of fixed effects. And I find that after Walmart's announcement, their foot traffic is about 2.6% lower relative to their competitors, the change in foot traffic. And that's robust to including both those store fixed effects or year-month fixed effects or county by year-month. So overall, it seems that at least temporarily, the aggregate consumers weren't a huge fan of Walmart making this statement. So moving on to the actual partisan response, I'm going to modify the difference in differences model by adding a third interaction here. And that interaction is going to be the Republican vote share of the county that went to Donald Trump in the 2016 election. So a higher share to Trump, I hypothesize, will be a more negative reaction to Walmart's statement. Importantly, I can also include a bunch of other interaction controls to measure things like whether the education of a local area might affect their response to the gun control statement, the gender, and the population, just by interacting those as well with Walmart, Sam's, and post-indicator variables. I also z-score the Republican vote share so that it's a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. Looking at those results, I find some strong evidence that the foot traffic does change based on partisan beliefs. So this first coefficient here, the Walmart Sam's by post, can be interpreted as the reaction in a county that had an average vote share to Trump. So in those counties, foot traffic decreased by about 3%. Now, if we increase our Republican vote share by 1 standard deviation, that's associated with an additional 3.3 to 3.7% decrease in your foot traffic. So areas that are more likely to be pro-gun rights are more negatively reacting to Walmart's statement. Now it gets even more interesting if we look at this through subsample regressions. So this is bucketing the sample based on counties' vote records. So on the far left is a regression of just highly Democratic counties, so those that voted less than 20% to Trump, and then progressing all the way to highly Republican counties, those that voted 80% or more to Trump. And I find that highly Democratic counties who are more likely to agree with the statement seem to reward the firm. So there's a 3% increase in foot traffic to Walmart relative to competitors. That effect monotonically declines as we get into more and more Republican areas. So there's a 10% decrease in the foot traffic for Walmart relative to competitors in these highly Republican areas. So that variation seems like a really strong signal that it's a partisan response that's driving these results. Now, in today's day and age, there's outrage that happens every day, and there's a new one around the corner. So I wanted to make sure to see whether or not this is a temporary effect or whether it persists past, the 24-hour Twitter cycle. And looking in aggregate, I actually find that there is a temporary reaction, and we revert to normal behavior. So this is parallel trends of Walmart's foot traffic relative to their competitors, both in the pre-period, which doesn't seem overall very different from each other. And then as soon as the Walmart statement happens, there's this strong negative reaction for their foot traffic, but that reverts back to normal about 3 months later when people, I guess, get the statements less salient to them, they go back to their normal shopping habits. However, if we specifically look at those who are really strongly opposed to this, so just looking at those highly Republican counties, I find evidence that this is going to persist for quite a while. So this is the triple interaction regression, but instead of having the post variable, I separated out into each individual month. And I find that in that very first month, there's a much stronger reaction. So there's about 18% lower foot traffic to Walmart relative to competitors. And it attenuates, but still remains economic and statistically significant up to 5 months after the announcement, which is as far as I have data. So it's about 8% lower foot traffic for Walmart relative to competitors in January 2020. So those who are really strongly opposed to this seem to persistently change their behavior. Now, importantly, a lot of the evidence that I've shown and some additional robustness checks rule out alternative channels. So one thing that could be happening here is people could just be afraid to shop at Walmart because there was a shooting at the El Paso Walmart in the prior month. They're afraid that there might be more. However, the increase in Democratic counties really suggests that that's not really a viable channel for this effect. Another effect or another channel that could be driving this would be a product-based reaction. So Walmart is no longer delivering gun ammo in their stores, so maybe customers just don't want to shop there just because they don't have this product anymore. However, I show in the paper that this result holds if you just look at Sam's Clubs as the treatment variable. So this is important because Sam's is owned by Walmart. They're prominently mentioned in the statement, but the shooting is probably less likely salient to Sam's Club members, and Sam's didn't sell this gun ammo in the pre-period. And I find the same results there, so there's a negative reaction and it's stronger in more conservative areas. So it really seems to be pointing that partisanship is the most likely channel that's driving these results. So the last test I run is to look at the remaining customers at Walmart. So the ones who continue to shop there either are doing one of two things. Either they don't really care about Walmart's politics and they just want to go get their groceries and flat screen TVs, or they're the ones who actually agree with Walmart's statement. And if they are the ones that agree, maybe they're going to try to shop there more as a way to reward Walmart. So the ideal measure here to test this would be to see if they start to spend more money there. And again, store level sales would be the holy grail. What I have using the SafeGraph data is a nice proxy using the time spent in store. So how long are they shopping in Walmart? With the idea being the longer you're there, the more likely you're spending more money at the store. So I rerun the triple interaction with this time spent in store as the dependent variable, just to see if there's an aggregate effect for these remaining customers, and then again, if there's a split by partisanship. And I find that customers do spend more time in the store. So there's about a 3.5% increase in the time spent in store at Walmart's and Sam's relative to competitors, but these partisan differences still remain. So that effect is attenuated in areas that vote more Republican in 2016. So in conclusion, there's a big partisan reaction to Walmart's gun policy statement, and I am only just looking at this one unique setting that gives me good identification, but gun control is only one of many things that we're polarized on anymore. Now we're polarized about immigration, environment, we're even found out that we're polarized on pandemics apparently, and just within the US, we have these polarizations, but there's a lot of countries that are experiencing a lot of polarization. So there's similar levels in, say, Britain, Canada, and Australia, if you look at that Boxell et al. Paper. So tying this back into today's conference, it's going to be very difficult for businesses to pursue stakeholder capitalism. And here I'm just thinking of this as the Business Roundtable definition, bringing value to all stakeholders. That's going to be really difficult to do when those stakeholders have different beliefs. So thank you for including the paper, John. I really look forward to your discussion, and I look forward to all questions and comments.